Hello, lovely listeners. I'm Julia, who will help you relax and fall asleep tonight. What time is it for you right now? And do you have any calming thoughts you'd like to share? Write it in the comments. Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by rolling hills and whispering forests, there lived a dear little girl renowned for the brightness of her smile and the kindness of her heart. Every person who crossed her path could not help but be enchanted by her gentle manner, and none loved her more deeply than her beloved grandmother. This grandmother was a kind, caring soul who devoted her every waking moment to the well-being and happiness of her granddaughter. There was little in the whole world that she would not give for that sweet child, and her love seemed as vast as the sky above. In the early days of spring, when the blossoms began to paint the meadows in soft hues, and the promise of new beginnings filled the air, the grandmother surprised her little companion with a gift that would forever change the course of her life. It was a cap made of red velvet, trimmed with delicate white lace and adorned with an embroidered flower in the center. The moment the little girl laid eyes on it, her face lit up with delight, and from that day onward, nothing else would ever compare. The cap suited her so exquisitely that she chose to wear it every day, and soon enough, the entire village began to refer to her as Little Red Riding Hood. The seasons turned and the warmth of summer caressed the earth, as one day the little girl's mother prepared herself to set her daughter on an important errand. With a tone of gentle urgency, she called her over and said, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother, for she is ill and weak, and these will do her good. Set out before it gets too hot, and please remember, when you're on your way, walk nicely and quietly. Do not stray from the path, for if you run off and the bottle should break, your grandmother will receive nothing." With a soft smile and a promise delivered with all the sincerity of a child's heart, Little Red Riding Hood took her mother's hand and assured her, "I will take great care." Thus began a journey that would lead the little girl through the enchanting, sometimes beguiling woods toward her grandmother's modest cottage, which lay half a league outside the village. The morning air was cool and sweet, filled with the murmurs of a world just beginning to wake. The sun gently peeked over the horizon, bestowing golden rays upon dewy blades of grass, and as she strode along the narrow, winding path, the child marveled at the beauty of nature unfolding before her eyes. The forest, with its towering trees and secret clearings, was alive with wildlife and whispered tales of legends and old magic. Birds trilled their morning songs in harmonious chorus, and the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush formed a subtle symphony that accompanied her every step. Little Red Riding Hood, with her red cap gently bouncing atop her head, absorbed every detail with wide-eyed wonder. She admired the way the light danced on leaves, and the way delicate droplets from an early rain shimmered like tiny jewels. For her, this journey was not merely a means to deliver a gift. It was an adventure, a chance to witness the splendor of the natural world. As she walked along the worn dirt path, her thoughts turned to the warmth and comfort of her grandmother's home, a small cottage that had seen many years of laughter, whispered secrets, and quiet moments of solace. In her mind, the cottage transformed into a haven of soft recollections. The aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the scent of wild herbs, the sound of her grandmother's gentle humming as she prepared a light meal, and the joyful moments when the two of them would sit by a crackling fire while recounting stories of yesteryear. Little Red Riding Hood cherished these memories dearly and clutched the basket containing the cake and wine as if it were a treasury filled with love. The path, however, wound through parts of the wood where shadows mingled with beams of sunlight, and there, amidst the interplay of light and dark, a cunning pair of eyes observed every step. Hidden behind a copse of birch trees, a large gray wolf had been roaming these woods for many years, his hunger and wile matched only by his silent capacity for deceit. This wolf was no ordinary creature. He took delight in plotting and scheming, and the sight of a tender young girl wandering freely stirred within him both mischief and a wicked hunger. Noticing the little girl as she passed by, the wolf stepped forward into the dappled light of the forest, his voice smooth yet unsettling as he greeted her. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," he said, in a tone that was at once both polite and disturbingly calculating. The little girl, innocent and trusting in her heart, replied with a bright smile, "Thank you kindly, Mr. Wolf." In her eyes, every creature seemed to possess a gentle nature, and she could not fathom that the wolf might harbor a dark secret. Curious about her journey, the wolf continued, "Whither away so early on such a lovely day?" Little Red Riding Hood, lifting her chin high, the child answered cheerfully, "I am on my way to see my dear grandmother. She has been feeling ill, and I bring her this lovely piece of cake and a bottle of wine to help make her feel better." The wolf, with his mind already swirling with mischief, inquired further, "And what do you carry in your apron, dear child?" With the warmth and honesty that marked her every word, she replied, "Cake and wine, lovingly prepared. Yesterday was baking day, and I hoped these treats would bring my grandmother strength and joy." Her tone was full of familial devotion, and the very idea of the fragile old woman receiving such care touched his heart in a way that was more calculated than compassionate. "Tell me then, where does your grandmother live?" the wolf asked, his voice soft and deceptive. With complete trust, Little Red Riding Hood replied, "She lives just a good quarter of a league farther on into the wood. Her cozy cottage stands beneath the watchful presence of 3 large oak trees, while nut trees offer their shade and bounty just below. You must surely know it, for it is as memorable as it is charming." The wolf's ears twitched with glee at the prospects of his plan. In his cloaked thoughts, he mused, "What a tender young creature! What a delectable morsel she would be, even more satisfying than the old woman herself. I must act craftily so as to capture both the nurturing lady and the delightful child." With the seed of his scheme freshly sown, he decided to walk by her side for a short while, feigning the warmth of a friendly conversation. As they journeyed together along a lesser trodden path where sunbeams played tricks with the shadows, the wolf remarked, "Dear child, have you noticed how magnificent the flowers are about here? Look at the vibrant colors of the petals as they sway gently in the breeze. Why do you not pause and look around? I do believe the little birds are singing a tune that even the grimmest heart might find uplifting. You seem to be walking so gravely along, as if you were headed to a place of strict lessons, rather than a home filled with care. The mention of the pretty blossoms and the lilting melodies of birds caught Little Red Riding Hood's fancy. Her eyes, which had been fixed on the straight and narrow path before her, now wandered into the forest's bosom. "Oh, how enchanting it all is," she thought, her heart leaping at the beauty that now lay scattered across the forest floor. Perhaps if I gather a fresh nosegay of the loveliest flowers, it will bring even more cheer to dear grandmother's heart. And so, the spell of nature's vivid hues and melodious calls overtook her, and without a second thought, she dashed off the beaten trail, eager to pluck the prettiest blossom, unaware of the dangers that lurked in the deeper shadows of the wood. Meanwhile, with silent precision and cold ambition, the wolf devised the next step of his wicked plan. He realized that if he were to capture both the little girl and her grandmother, he must first reach the cottage and secure his own position there. With a swift, determined stride that belied his devious intent, he left Little Red Riding Hood to her fantasy of floral splendor and trotted quickly off the well-worn path towards the little cottage. He arrived at the ancient, ivy-clad cottage, its walls weathered by time but filled with memories of laughter and tender care. The wolf approached the door softly, as if mindful of the frailty of the occupant within. With a cautious knock that resonated through the quiet air, he called out in a sweet, measured tone, "Who is there?" From within the dim interior came a frail, trembling voice. "Lift the latch, dear visitor, for I am too weak to rise." "It is I, your granddaughter, Little Red Riding Hood, bearing cake and wine to help you regain your strength." Unbeknownst to the elderly lady, the creature at the door was not the gentle child, but the cunning wolf in disguise. Quick as a flash and without a word of hesitation, the wolf used his nimble paws to unlatch the door. It sprang open as if welcoming a familiar friend, and he silently slipped inside. In the quiet of the home, he moved straight to the small, creaking bed where the old woman rested. With a ravenous hunger, he devoured her whole, leaving behind only the vestiges of the care and warmth that had once graced the room. Once his dark deed was done, the wolf took the old woman's clothes, shuffling them over his own shaggy frame, and even donned her cap with a grotesque parody of tenderness. He lay down in her bed with a chilling semblance of rest, drawing the thin curtains over himself so that he might hide his true nature. In that silent, oppressive moment, the cottage became a stage for the unfolding of a cruel drama. Time passed, and in the midst of the woodland's gentle hum, Little Red Riding Hood, having gathered an abundant bouquet of wildflowers in her innocent fervor, suddenly recalled her errand. Abruptly guilt-stricken at having strayed from the path, she gathered her basket and began her hurried return to her grandmother's cottage. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and a hint of unease fluttered in her heart as she neared the familiar clearing where her cherished grandmother lived. To her dismay, the door of the cottage was slightly ajar, its creaking wood and silent threshold betraying an unsettling quiet. She hesitated at the entrance, a feeling of wrongness tugging at her fragile intuition, yet she pressed on with a trembling determination. "Good morning, grandmother," she called out softly, her voice echoing in the stillness of the empty room. But no reply reached her ears. In a moment of naive apprehension, the little girl approached the bed where she expected to see her beloved grandmother. The soft, gentle figure lying beneath the drawn curtains seemed oddly unfamiliar. With a mix of curiosity and a creeping sense of worry, she pulled back the curtains to reveal a figure that was both strangely altered and disturbingly silent. The cap, once so lovingly worn by her grandmother, was now perched in an odd, slanted manner over a face that seemed hidden and secretive. "Good morning, grandmother," Little Red Riding Hood said with a quivering voice, trying hard to ignore the unsettling air that filled the room. The figure on the bed responded with a rasp that sent a shiver down the girl's spine. "Good morning, dear." Though something was amiss, the child's gentle manners compelled her to continue with the customary niceties. "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have," she remarked innocently, her tone filled with puzzlement rather than dread. "The better to hear you with, my child," came the reply, the words tumbling from the enigmatic voice with an unnerving slowness. "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have," she continued, her eyes growing wider as she tried to make sense of the figure before her. "The better to see you with, my dear," the voice replied, each word heavier than the last, and the air in the room thickened with a sense of impending doom. Gathering her courage, Little Red Riding Hood stepped closer, her gaze shifting hesitantly downward. "But grandmother, what large hands you have," she observed, her voice wavering like a timid breeze through the leaves. "The better to hug you with," the creature murmured, a disturbing warmth to what should have been a loving sentiment. Trembling now and filled with a mounting sense of alarm, the girl could only muster one final, desperate comment. "Oh, but grandmother, what a terribly big mouth you have." In that precise moment, as if the words were a key that unlocked the darkest door of all, the creature leapt from the bed with a fearsome snarl, its true identity revealed in a flash of malicious intent. "The better to eat you with," roared the beast, and before Little Red Riding Hood could comprehend or react, the wolf, driven by its insidious hunger, darted forward in one swift, brutal motion and swallowed her whole. Deep in the bowels of that grisly creature, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The wolf, now lethargic from his monstrous indulgence, settled back onto the bed, and soon his snores filled the quiet cottage with a sinister melody of sleep. Outside, the world continued in its gentle cycle, unaware of the dark twist of fate that had unfolded within those humble walls. Not far from the cottage, patrolling the edge of the wood and ever vigilant of the balance between nature and the community, was a noble huntsman, known both for his bravery and his righteous sense of duty. As he strolled along a narrow trail, the disquieting sound of heavy snoring drew his attention. How peculiar, he mused to himself, for he had often heard of strange happenings in these very woods. With measured steps, he approached the cottage, his thoughts growing ever more suspicious as he neared the door left ajar. Inside, as he crept quietly into the dim room, the huntsman noticed something most unusual. There, in the center of the small bed, lay a great, slumbering shape that seemed oddly out of place. His eyes narrowed as he recognized with dawning horror that the figure was not that of his elderly neighbor, but a hulking wolf disguised in borrowed garments. "Do I find you here, you old sinner?" he declared softly, though determination shone in his eyes. "I have long sought to bring you to justice." Before the huntsman could raise his weapon and end the menace, a spark of thought lit in his mind, a possibility that perhaps the old woman was still in danger, hidden somewhere within the belly of this treacherous beast. With a careful precision born of years of experience, he set aside his intent to fire and instead retrieved a pair of sturdy scissors from his belt. With deliberate and cautious snips, he began to cut open the wolf's swollen belly, each careful incision accompanied by the pounding of his resolute heart. After 2 snips, the darkness within the creature began to stir, and to the astonished eyes of the huntsman, the brilliant figure of Little Red Riding Hood emerged, shining like silver in the faint light. The little girl cried out, "Ah, how frightened I have been! How dark it was inside the wolf!" Her voice trembled with shock and relief as she emerged from the monstrous prison of the beast's belly, still alive though deeply shaken from the ordeal. Before long, the old grandmother, long thought to be devoured entirely, was seen emerging from the disarray of the beast's dark interior. Weak and gasping for every precious breath, she clutched at the edges of life until the huntsman and Little Red Riding Hood gathered around her with tender care. Despite her ordeal, the old woman's eyes gleamed with gratitude as she was released from the grip of death and despair. Her recovery, though slow, was filled with the hope of many shared tomorrows. Realizing that this dire episode had imparted a lesson too potent to forget, Little Red Riding Hood, her heart still pounding with the residual terror of her recent imprisonment, quickly fetched a collection of large stones from outside. With the help of the courageous huntsman and her recovering grandmother, she carefully filled the wolf's belly with the heavy stones. No sooner had the beast awoken and attempted to flee than the burdensome weight of the stones dragged him down, causing him to collapse in a heap and fall still. In that quiet, sorrowful moment, the wolf's treachery came to an end. The brave huntsman, knowing that the memory of the wolf's misdeeds must be transformed into a lesson for the community, skillfully removed his hide and carried it away. With respectful determination, he made sure that no further pain could come from that vile creature. The old grandmother, her spirit rekindled by the love and devotion of those around her, sat down to share the cake and wine brought by Little Red Riding Hood. With every bite and every sip, the warmth of care filled the room, and slowly the fragile threads of life began to mend. As the day faded into a quiet, somnolent evening, the 3, Little Red Riding Hood, her good-hearted grandmother, and the steadfast huntsman, sat together by a crackling hearth. They reflected upon the events of the day, each pondering the delicate interplay of trust and caution. Little Red Riding Hood, her mind now heavy with the memory of both beauty and danger, resolved in her tender heart that the lessons learned on that fateful day would never soon be forgotten. "Never again," she whispered with conviction, "will I stray from the path, for I have seen both the marvel and the menace that lie hidden in the woods." In the days that followed, the village buzzed with quiet discourse about the strange happenings in the forest. The community, once lulled into a false sense of security by the calm whispers of nature, began to embrace a more measured vigilance. Mothers would remind their children of the peril that could lurk beyond the safe village boundaries, and elders spoke in hushed tones of the cunning wolf that had nearly destroyed the beauty of innocence. Yet, amid the cautionary tales, there was also gratitude and hope, for the courage of the huntsman and the resilience of the little girl and her beloved grandmother had restored not only safety, but also faith in the strength of kinship and community. In humble moments of quiet reflection, Little Red Riding Hood would recall the gentle admonitions of her mother regarding the dangers of wandering off the path. Her heart, touched both by the bright allure of wildflowers and the cold terror of the wolf's deceit, had learned that beauty and peril often coexist side by side. She began to understand that wisdom was born of experience, that the world, though filled with wondrous marvels, required respectful caution and careful steps on every journey. In the long, peaceful nights that followed, while the winds whispered secrets to the rustling trees and the stars twinkled with soft mercy overhead, the little girl, now wiser beyond her tender years, would sit by her grandmother's side. Together, they recounted the miraculous events of that fateful day, a day that had transformed terror into triumph. Grandmother, with gentle smiles and tired eyes, would say, "My dearest child, every twist in our journey is a lesson from life. Even when darkness seeks to overtake us, the light of love and the strength of our bonds will always guide us back to safety." And in these quiet recollections, the huntsman too was remembered not only as a savior who had vanquished evil, but as a symbol of courage and steadfast goodness. His actions served as a reminder that while the world might harbor hidden dangers, bravery and compassion were the true protectors of hope and innocence. The forest, once seen merely as a canvas of wild beauty and adventure, now carried within it the echoes of this remarkable tale, a story to be passed down from one generation to the next, a story of loss and rescue, of caution and redemption. Time continued its gentle march, and seasons turned anew. The girl grew, each day more radiant and wise, carrying her red cap as both a symbol of her identity and a reminder of the narrow line between the dreams of youth and the warnings of experience. Every visit to her grandmother's cottage became a quiet celebration of life, a reaffirmation of coexistence between the vibrancy of human spirit and the wild, unpredictable forces of nature. In the years that followed, tales of the extraordinary events became part of local legend. Neighbors spoke of the day when darkness was chased away by the light of familial love and communal courage. Teachers in the village recounted the moral of the tale to their students, that while the world abounds with enchantment and beauty, one must never forsake caution or stray from the safe, well-worn path. These stories, woven into the fabric of everyday discourse, help to instill in everyone a deep respect for both nature and the bonds that tied their community together. Little Red Riding Hood, now older and carrying the wisdom of a life lived in careful balance, often found herself pondering the many meanings that the day held. Sitting by the windowsill as the sun dipped below the horizon, she would trace the fading patterns of light on the garden and remember the lessons of that perilous journey. The memory of the wolf, once a symbol of treachery and malice, had become a marker in her mind, a symbol of the dangers that lurk when trust is misplaced and caution is abandoned. Yet amidst those somber reflections, she also remembered the sunlit clearings, the sweet scent of wildflowers, the warm caress of gentle breezes, and the tender smiles shared with those who cared for her. This balance of light and shadow, joy and sorrow, became a part of her inner landscape, a constant reminder that every step in life must be taken with both an open heart and a watchful eye. Even the huntsman's weathered face, which had once been set in determined lines as he liberated the two delicate souls from the belly of death, would sometimes seem to soften as villagers recalled his brave deeds. He had not only saved lives that day, but also awakened in the hearts of many a quiet resolve to stand against the encroachments of darkness, whatever form it might assume. His legacy lived on in the stories told by families gathered around flickering fires, in whispered conversations on cool autumn evenings, and in the silent promises made by those who understood that courage can be found even in the most unassuming souls. And so, as life continued its eternal dance beneath the starry skies and among the ancient trees, the tale of Little Red Riding Hood became more than a simple story of a girl and a wolf. It became a parable of love, loss, and hope. It was a testament to the enduring power of familial bonds and the resilient spirit of those who, when confronted by the shadows, dared to summon the light. Even on the darkest nights, when the forest whispered doubts and the winds carried the echoes of long-forgotten fears, the memory of that extraordinary day shone like a beacon, guiding every traveler back to the warmth of home, to the embrace of those who loved them dearly, and to the certainty that even in the face of wickedness, kindness and courage would always prevail. As the gentle night drew its cool veil over the village, and the final notes of the day's symphony faded into a hushed lullaby, the memories of that fateful journey became distilled wisdom, a promise to heed the guidance of those who care and to remain ever mindful of the path. Little Red Riding Hood, now wise and strong, carried this promise like a cherished secret in her heart. With every step she took, she remembered the warning of her dear mother and the rescue that had restored her fragile spirit, ensuring that she would forever keep the path before her in view. In the quiet moments before sleep, as the stars winked benevolently down from the heavens and the world exhaled a tranquil breath, she would close her eyes and recall the day's events. The images of wildflowers, echoing footsteps in the woods, and the brave huntsman's determined face blended together into a tapestry of lessons learned through both wonder and adversity. And so, in every gentle dream and in every morning's light, the memory of that courageous journey served as a steadfast guide, a reminder that while beauty may signal adventure, Wisdom ensures safe passage along life's winding trail. Sweet dreams. Good night.